My function as President of the Council, and I give the floor to the representative of Libya.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim.
In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful, Mr. President, I would like to begin by congratulating you and the Republic of Ireland for assumption of the presidency this month, and I thank Mr. Jan Kubic for his briefing, and His Excellency Ambassador of India for his briefing, as well as Sister Asma Khalifa for her briefing, which does not only represent women, but also youth who have suffered during the past years. We call on the Security Council in the future to expand the participation to include other segments of the Libyan society and civil society so that you can listen to all views. Ladies and gentlemen, our discussion today comes at a critical time of my nation's history. It's a time when we see the light of hope and of a breakthrough and reconciliation. Since the declaration of ceasefire in October last year, and the agreements that have led to the selection of the Presidential Council and the Government of National Unity through the Libyan Political Dialogue Forum in Tunisia, whom we thank for all the support provided during these years. And despite all the challenges facing the Presidential Council and the government, and despite the delay of the fulfillment of tasks in the High Council of State and the Parliament, and within the available capacities, executive powers have been united to a large extent. A number of service projects have also been launched to begin to urgently address the needs of the citizens, such as needs within energy and sector and the energy sector, and to also undertake important economic reforms. The pandemic also is receiving special attention through providing vaccines, and 3 million vaccinations have been distributed already, and more is on the way. And a number of vaccination centers have been established throughout the year in this regard, throughout the country. In this regard, we thank the organizations and partners and member states who have supported us in recent times. And within the context of the government's work to provide services to the citizens, the law on decentralization has been enacted, and the delegation of authorities to municipalities has begun. They are being supported to collect their own revenues and to implement their own development projects. In the same context, and out of the executive power's commitment to the roadmap, a ministerial committee has been established to support the elections. The committee will provide the necessary technical, logistical, and financial support to assist the High National Election Commission, and they will also conduct outreach campaigns to encourage citizens to register as voters. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also registering voters abroad. In addition, a comprehensive plan has been developed to secure voting centers through training 30,000 police officers. In this regard, we call on the relevant parties in Libya to accelerate the fulfillment of their obligations as per the political agreement and the roadmap, both of which were adopted and also supported by this Council. This needs to occur in a manner that reflects real solidarity and unity, and so that the segments of Libyan society will all trust the results of the elections. We must not distort the democratic transition that the Libyan people aspire to. We also call on the United Nations to accelerate in deploying the election needs assessment team to Libya to determine the necessary assistance in order to guarantee a successful, transparent, and fair election process. Ladies and gentlemen, without a doubt, national initiatives to solve the crisis in Libya are the basis by which we can achieve stability. This Security Council, through the statements of its members, have repeatedly called on the importance of Libyan ownership and Libyan leadership of the political process, and that this is necessary for the Libyan state to achieve its sovereignty over all its territory. Accordingly, in Libya, Stability Initiative has been announced. It is purely Libyan, and it is based on two important processes, the security process and the economic process. They are both closely related, and they require the coordination and cooperation of everyone to achieve the goals, including goals such as uniting the military institution under the leadership of the civilian leadership, and also achieving the monopoly of the state over the use of force and weapons. In this regard, we call on you to provide support to this national initiative, in particular that it is based on the outcomes of the two Berlin conferences and the Security Council resolutions on the topic. In this regard, we also call on you to support the conference called for next month that will feature participation by regional countries and organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, here we are extending our hands, and we are open to everyone in order to support stability in Libya and to rebuild the trust between the Libyan people and the international community. This international community that was directly responsible for the developments since 2011. This is a time to prove good faith, as you have yourselves admitted in this regard, and in this occasion we welcome the recent revisitation of policies, and now that everyone is convinced there can be no military solution in Libya. All this reflects positively on the situation in Libya. We will no longer accept any negative external interference in our domestic affairs. Once again, we call on you to contribute with us to build and construct and not to demolish. Ladies and gentlemen, the Government of National Unity reiterates the important role of neighboring countries in order to support stability in Libya and the region. In this regard, we thank Algeria for hosting the ministerial meeting of the neighboring countries days ago. We also look forward to the second meeting that will be hosted by Egypt to follow up on these conversations. These discussions have reiterated support for the stability in Libya and for the work of the Joint Military Committee 5+5, and they also emphasize that the solution must be Libyan and must respond to the Libyan demand for sovereignty and the demand for the exit of all foreign fighters and mercenaries from the country under direct oversight of the Libyan state. And Libya must be party to any negotiations in this regard, and necessary measures must be taken to guarantee the non-spillover of conflict into neighboring countries, in particular in the Sahel region, and there is a lesson to be learned from the events in Chad. In this regard, the four-party agreement has been announced between Libya, Niger, Chad, and Sudan in order to cooperate on borders control. When discussing the role of neighbors, we would be remiss not to thank Morocco for its continued efforts and for its repeated hosting of Libyan political parties in order to create a conducive environment to achieve a political settlement. Ladies and gentlemen, on human rights, my government reiterates that it is working diligently to guarantee respect for human rights and to prevent further violations of human rights after more than 10 years of conflict. We emphasize that the relevant national authorities, through cooperation with the United Nations and the fact-finding commission of the Human Rights Council, has has participated in meetings and field visits to inspect the discovered mass graves and is working to fulfill the investigations on war crimes and to uncover the fate of missing persons and illegally detained persons. This all comes within an effort to combat impunity because such crimes do not enjoy a statute of limitations. On migration, we reiterate the need to cooperate to address this international phenomenon and to work to develop cooperation mechanisms that achieve development in the source nations. We emphasize that Libya is a transit country and not an origin country. We can contribute to addressing this phenomenon as a stable Libya in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, we must remind of the importance of national reconciliation. This effort was absent in recent years, and this absence directly led to the failure of many discussions and initiatives, despite being the necessary building block for the success of any political process. In this regard, everyone has followed the first results of reconciliation and efforts to rebuild trust between Libyans through the efforts of the Presidential Council and the government and through cooperation with the Joint Military Commission. The exchange of prisoners has continued and the coastal road has been opened, and a joint force to secure several strategic sites has been established. In addition, many detainees who have been previously acquitted by the courts have been released. Therefore, from this forum, I call on you to support the national reconciliation effort that has been announced by the chair of the Presidential Council recently, and to support the efforts of the head of government to achieve reconciliation, because the journey of reconciliation is long and includes several processes that are interconnected. It begins through activating the judiciary and transitional justice, and begins with truth and reconciliation and to apologize for the mistakes of the past, and it begins with reparations and the release of arbitrarily detained individuals throughout the country. It begins with the return of displaced persons and the search for missed persons. And in this regard, we call on the African Union to support Libya in this process. The union that was established, the anniversary for its establishment was yesterday, which has taken place in Libya. In conclusion, I call on all factions of the Libyan people, despite the wounds, to forgive and to cease to be controlled by the past. I call on everyone to begin reconciliation and peace and to forgive when able. As Nelson Mandela has said, the courageous people do not fear forgiving for the sake of peace. This is a critical phase of Libyan history. We must work to achieve consensus and reconciliation and address the spoilers firmly. We must support our youth who are driven to carry arms and who are the fuel of war. We must end all forms of destructive foreign interference and must address everyone who impedes the fulfillment of Libyan aspirations. We reiterate to everyone that Libya has begun to recover and will return strong. We have not surrendered and will not surrender. The Libyan people are now aware of everything that has been plotted to attempt to weaken the Libyan people and to deprive them of their free will. This will never occur. Long live Libya, a civilian united state that is free. Thank you, Mr. President.